与大家见面，千万别忘了收看。
The Mass Rapid Transit System is the largest, most complex and ambitious public works project in the history of Singapore. Completed ahead of schedule and within budget, the MRT is a delight to look at and to use. The studies started 20 years before it opened. Although traffic conditions in Singapore were improving, the experts agreed that continued improvement demanded mass rapid transport, and detailed studies followed. After a lot of debate between the all-bus and rail and bus lobbies, the go-ahead for a rail system was given in 1982, with a budget of 5 billion Singapore dollars. By making a decision to build that year, two factors were in Singapore's favor. The prevailing world recession meant contractors would bid low to get the work, and the completion of the Hong Kong MTR meant that a lot of expertise and equipment was ready and waiting. Once the decision to build was taken, things moved quickly, and a deadline of 1992 was set for completion of all phases. When tenders were called, preference was given to foreign joint ventures with local companies to encourage the transfer of technology. The final routes were drawn in 1983. Linking the new towns with Orchard Road and the Central Business District. 20 kilometers ran underground and 47 above. With all phases complete, the system would have 42 stations. On August the 30th, 1983, Parliament passed control to the Mass Rapid Transit Corporation. And the first ground was broken at Shan Road. Parliament had given the corporation the right to tunnel under private property and to build viaducts over it. Over and under they went. Two methods were used to go underground, according to soil and area conditions. The first method was to bore using a shield to carve directly into the face of the tunnel. The shield jacks itself forward, passing soil and rock back on conveyors. The shields used laser beams to align themselves. More than 1 million loads of earth were carried out by 1,000 lorries. Some of it was used to reclaim land from the sea. More than 1 million segments of tunnel wall were precast for Phase 1. These were aligned and bolted in place behind the advancing shield, forming an immensely strong watertight tube for trains to run in. As most of the boring was done below sea level, air pressure was raised inside the tunnel to keep the water out. Like deep-sea divers, the workers had to decompress at the end of every shift to avoid the bends. The Singapore Navy helped here, keeping an eye on procedures and giving the workers regular medical checks. Much of Singapore sits on soft, sticky marine clay. The conditions beneath Robinson and Scott's roads were particularly soggy. The ooze could not be held back by air pressure alone, and jet grouting was needed. 5,000 holes were drilled, and a grouting mixture of cement and soil was pumped down to solidify the clay. Tunneling then went ahead quickly. The first tunnel breakthrough came in mid-85. The second method used for underground construction was cut and cover. It was used wherever the area above was clear. A deep, wide cut was made between piles or diaphragm walls. The tunnel or station was built inside it and then covered. All the underground stations were built this way. On several sites, diaphragm walls of reinforced concrete were cast in narrow trenches where heavy mud supported the sides. In more stable areas, soldier or sheet pile walls were used. To cross the Singapore River, a double-sheet pile coffer dam was driven to hold back the water. The riverbed was pumped dry, the tunnel structure was built in a cut, and then a solid metre of concrete was used to seal and protect it. After flooding, construction could begin on the other side of the river. Several lines in the system met in this area, and the crossing had to let trains change lines. This double-level crossover went below the standard chartered bank. Its foundations were built to suit the MRT. The 47 kilometers above ground followed some of Singapore's busiest roads. Keeping the lanes open and traffic flowing smoothly was very important. To build the viaducts, concrete beams weighing up to 165 tons were cast, then raised to a gantry and carried along the completed viaduct to be dropped into place on the crossheads. Up to 56 beams a month were launched in this way, while traffic flowed with almost no interruption below. The last beam in Phase 1A was launched on the 27th of November 1986, months ahead of the original schedule. It signaled success for the corporation's speed-up of the whole construction program. The new deadline for completion of all phases was moved from 1992 to 1990. 6.5 years for 67 kilometers. But building a railway, no matter how beautiful when finished, causes some disruptions, some temporary diversions. Things returned to normal quickly once construction was completed. Singapore has a reputation for being clean and green. Contractors helped maintain it by washing every lorry before it left a muddy site. Noise was constantly checked and working hours adjusted to avoid things like school examinations. A machine was used to simulate the noise and vibration of a passing train to check on sound control measures before the trains ran. Block 206 Toa Payoh was the only residential building affected by tunneling. Some families had to move out while new foundations that made room for the tunnel were put in. Then the old piles that were in the way were cut out. Community relations programs kept affected residents up to date on all construction plans. Talks were given and questions answered. An MRT hotline was set up and backed with full investigation for all complaints. Great care was also taken to preserve buildings of historic interest while tunneling below them. The ground beneath the chapel of the convent of the Holy Infant Jesus was heavily grouted, and the works below the Sun Yat-sen Villa and many other old buildings were carefully monitored. No one wants to see the past damaged by the march of progress. Miles of cables were laid for the complex communications and control systems. As part of Singapore's civil defense network, 9 of the underground stations were built to be totally self-sufficient. All electricity, water and air conditioning supplies and the tunnels themselves were protected by special blast doors, filters and sliding walls which could completely seal the stations in an emergency. Over 190 kilometers of rails were laid in 18-meter sections. The sections were thermite welded for minimum wheel noise. Conventional ballasted track with wooden sleepers was laid above ground. And pre-assembled slab track with concrete sleepers underground. With some floating sections in areas near flats and commercial buildings to avoid noise and vibration. An insulated rail runs beside the track, supplying 750 volts of electricity to the trains. This third rail system was chosen for its efficiency and to avoid unsightly overhead cables. The rail cars were built in Japan and began arriving on schedule in April 1986. Their size and weight meant that they had to be moved at night by road from the docks to Bishan Depot. More than 5 times the size of Singapore's National Stadium, Bishan Depot houses the administration and training facilities, including a full-scale model of 8 stations with full-size control panels and mimic diagrams. A cab where new operators can develop and practice their skills watching a video simulation. A test track where trains can be put through their paces, with sandbags standing in for people. Regular maintenance and repair, washing, cleaning and stabling of trains. These are all done at the Bishan Depot. There was a clamor to board the first train in November 1987. As more sections opened, it was love at first ride. The trains were fast, clean and cool. All the above-ground stations were designed to blend with their surroundings. Some were designed with special architectural features that would emphasize the character of a neighborhood. 5 of the underground stations were planted with underground gardens to prove that Singapore is a garden city. Local artists were given commissions worth 2 million Singapore dollars for murals and artworks for 6 stations. A decision was made early in the design process to save as much energy as possible throughout the system. Platform screen doors reduce air conditioning loss as well as holding back the blast of air from an approaching train. With regenerative braking, trains actually put electricity back into the third rail when they're slowed down. And the trains are built to freewheel downhill. The high-speed, high-volume escalators run on reduced power during off-peak hours. The MRT control system is computerized and links every station and every section of track to the operations control center next to City Hall Station. All MRT operations, from temperature control to accurate train stopping, are checked by computer. The controllers have a direct radio link with the drivers at all times. The signaling mimic diagram gives an overview of the system. Train positions are shown by colored lights. Controllers can call up any section of the system on their monitors. As a safety measure, all the optic fiber cables that transmit data are duplicated, and the computers in each station can take over if any breakdown occurs at the control center. To keep a safe distance between trains while keeping them on time, computerized signaling relays continuously update their speed and status. As a train approaches the one in front, it is electronically told to slow down or stop. When the train in front pulls away, codes start the one behind it and speed it on its way again. With the security of 3 power supplies, both central and local computer control and video links, Singapore's MRT system promises to be one of the safest in the world. Automatic ticket dispensers, change makers and stored value tickets promise it will be one of the easiest to use. With 30% of all Singaporeans living within walking distance of a station, 40% of all business and industry near one, and a full 50% of the whole population living within 1 kilometre of a station, the MRT is going to be one of the handiest systems ever. It will be a fast, efficient way to get to work, to the shops, to visit, to go out to eat, to dance, to travel. It will stop the roads getting more crowded every year. It will save billions on road construction. It will make life better for everyone who lives or just visits Singapore. In 1990, 2 years ahead of the original schedule, 66 trains will be operating with 6 cars each. By the year 2000, they should be carrying up to 1 million passengers a day in quiet, cool, colourful comfort. No doubt those 1 million passengers will wonder how they ever got along without the MRT.
A vision fulfilled, the MRT story is a Mass Rapid Transit Corporation production.
Now, I can't use this tape measure because it's too stiff to bend around the curves of the nails. So instead, what I'm going to do is to use this ribbon, and then I will measure that against the tape measure. Okay, the tape is set. We'll begin with the ribbon. I've never done this before. Mr. Chalal likes to leave his nails their natural color. As you can see, that nail alone is almost 2 feet long. Mr. Aditya, who had to travel here with a helper to protect his nails, prefers red fingernail polish. The new Guinness record for the longest total fingernails in the world goes to Mr. Chalal, 103 1/4 inches. That's 10 3/4 inches more than the last time that he won the Guinness record. And the record for the longest single fingernail in the world also goes once again to Mr. Shalal for his thumbnail, which is 26 inches long. Well, we look forward to seeing both of you once again with who knows how many more inches of fingernails. When we first tried to contact Mr. Beale, he was in jail serving a life sentence. Now, awaiting retrial, he is a desert nomad. The tribesmen sing about him and how, like Robin Hood, he tried to right the wrongs of the little people. But Mr. Beale does not hold the Guinness record because of this. He holds it because he has the longest mustache in the world. Namaste. Namaste. Mr. Beale is going to unravel his mustache now so that we can measure it. Helping us measure and helping us talk to Mr. Beale will be our interpreter, Miss Tripti Pandey. In India, where almost 200 languages are spoken, interpreters are indispensable. All right, will you help me measure this? Oh, okay. Well, it's hard to stretch it all the way out. Would you like me to help?
No.
No? He wants to do it himself? May I hold it out? Okay, and you hold the other end out? Okay. And 1/2 inches. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Would you please tell Mr. Beale thank you very much?
बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद कर सुना बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद कर
Namaste. Namaste.
So, however determined you are to get into the Guinness Book, unless you've got 30 or 40 years to spare, those are 2 records you may care to pass on. Very few of the 2 million people who each year visit our next Guinness record holder view it the same way we're about to. But then very, very few would dare to.
The Guinness Book notes, the Grand Canyon is the largest land gorge in the world. It is a mile deep and an astounding 217 miles long, and it is spectacularly beautiful. The Colorado River snakes through its entire length, and while it is placid in places, it is also terrifyingly turbulent in others. The stretches of the Colorado that travel through the lava falls and crystal falls are the roughest to be rafted on a regular basis. These intrepid explorers are taking it on in wooden dories, which are twice as hard to handle as rafts. Perhaps this boat ride redefines the words wet and wild. A trip down the Colorado usually takes a week, and fortunately, large sections are tranquil and beautiful. But around the next bend, the swirling waves of water can easily flip a dory and throw the rafters into the wild, white water. As they swim to safety, they fight powerful currents and dodge the jagged rocks just below the surface. Getting wet, very wet, is expected and a large part of the terrifying fun. As night descends on Crystal Falls, their treacherous beauty underscores the extremes of the legendary Grand Canyon, because the most difficult stretch of the Colorado starts here. The next morning finds these men plotting their course, which they hope will see them safely through the hazards ahead. The mighty torrents make mockery of their plans. They are thrown from their boat time and time again. Now they can relax and enjoy the extraordinary beauty of this record-breaking scene.
Well, that's about all we have time for this week, but before we go, there is just time to tell you that according to the Guinness Book, on the 2nd of August 1985, Randall Schneider skipped non-stop for 12 hours and 34 minutes in Janesville, Wisconsin. He said he first became interested in skipping at school, where he skipped geography, he skipped history, he skipped biology. Until next week, goodbye for now.
Next week, the best BMX bikers in
What had seemed rather extreme and pointless feats to me were beginning to make sense. It was through trance I realized that they could travel beyond the shadow screen. Antoine told me one has to explore both sides of the screen, the dark and the light, to be able to harmonize the two. Someone who really embodied this ability, he said, was our neighbor, the great artist, Gusti Nyoman Lempad. When I spoke to him here, he was 116 years old.
The
long fingernails of his left hand symbolize that his powers extend beyond his physical body. The great sage of Hindu Balinese mythology and the arts. He was known even in Europe in the 1920s for his superb religious and erotic art. But at home, it's for his temple sculpture and architecture that he's most recognized. Lempad has left his mark on 20th century Bali. Born into an era of omnipotent princes, he survived into the age of astronauts, one of whom he actually met when Ron Evans sought him out in his Highland community. The two exchanged very different views of the moon that Evans had actually walked on, and which Lempad had touched in other ways. This early drawing tells the story of the 7 celestial nymphs of the Pleiades, who fly down using their sarongs as wings to bathe in the waters of the world. A young prince spies on them, falls in love with the youngest and steals her sarong, so she can't fly back to the heavens. He returns it to her only when she bears him a child, half heaven, half earth. That child is all children. If a Balinese child cries at night, he's comforted by being shown the night sky. There is your mother, they tell him, who we all come from and where we all return, so there's no reason for tears.
Lawrence had read somewhere about a tribe on another island that believed its first ancestors had literally descended from the stars in skyships. So off we went again. Our destination was Celebes, and our landfall Bira, where our Indonesian adventure had begun so many years before. Little had changed on these beaches where the Bugis pirates built their sailing prows. But we found the Sinar Surya, the prow we'd once sailed east aboard, had returned to die on the beach where she was born. And in the village, we found that her owner, the local chieftain, was also dead. His widow told me that our old friend and benefactor had recently been murdered on the beach near the Sinar Surya.
Bukan untuk mau memajukan, saya rasa desa ini dan masyarakat.
This time we'd come to Celebes looking for a tribe living high in the mountains, at the very center of the island. We'd been lent a jeep. A good thing, because it turned out to be one of those roads. After 12 hours lurching and slithering along the edges of barren precipices, we reached their valley. This is the home of the Toraja tribe. Their name means the people from above. In a hilltop village, around a bamboo tower, we found a festival warming up. The tower, they told us, is a stairway to the stars. And the litters carry young virgins, celestial nymphs. The Toraja were first contacted by Westerners at the beginning of this century. They were fierce warriors and occasional headhunters. Priests chanted the history of the clan. They paused often to refresh themselves from foaming bamboos of potent palm wine, an essential ingredient for all Toraja rituals. The four elders footing the bill for all this led their families around the tower. The Sarita textile, with its intricate symbols, links them back through the generations to the stars of their origins. This is a celebration of wealth, and the Toraja are certainly not shy about displaying it. The banknotes are all of the highest denomination. By the time the ceremony is over, the hosts will have given it all away. There seemed to be no sense of loss. They'd contributed to the clan. More important, they'd honored the ancestors, who are never far away. They must now start accumulating all over again to prepare for the other great celebration of their life, their death.
This is a Toraja cave of the dead. We found these mountains riddled with them. I was brought up to keep my distance from mortal remains. But not the Toraja. Even the children come here to delve into the ark-like coffins. They rearrange and play with the skulls of their families. Lowland pirate tribes would raid these caves for treasure, so the Toraja took to hollowing out vaults in the high cliff faces and balconies which they lined with totem effigies of their dead, carved in their likeness. Rounding a corner one day, we found them lowering the effigies from the highest vault in the highest cliff. They were cleaning and redressing them for the death rites of the last king of the tribe. The king's first ancestors, they told us, descended from the Pleiades in a starship. They still build their houses in the ark-like forms of that ship to remind them, they say, of their origins. The carved symbols on their walls form a subtle language. From the ground up can be read their entire genealogical tree stretching all the way back to the Pleiades. Across the fields, an entire ceremonial village is being built, just for this occasion, to house the thousands of funeral guests. The village would be torn down afterwards. This is the house of Lasso Rinding Puang Sangala, last king of the Toraja. He had died 4 years before our arrival, and his body had been lying here at home ever since, while the tribe prepared for his send-off. For these 4 years, his widow had not left his side. Wrapped in rich textiles, his corpse had long since desiccated, and only the faintest odor of death remained. The girls are kept busy husking rice for the guests who would arrive from the farthest corners of the valley. The rhythm they use is unique to the occasion, an invitation to a feast, the music of death. And the guests arrive. They bring gifts of rice, palm wine, and sacrificial offerings of pigs and water buffalo. The rites of death revolve around the buffalo. For a dead nobleman, dozens must be killed. For the last king, hundreds. This buffalo's never seen a white man before. Before their sacrifice, they are released amongst the crowd. The ceremonial village vibrated to the mabadon, the hypnotic tones which take them into trance. They say they can feel all the past and future generations of their tribe moving through them. Day and night, for a whole month, they chanted. At last, the day dawned when the king would be carried to the death cliffs, to his launch pad back to the stars. The watches are empty jewelry. None of them work. This was the day the really important guests arrived. The delegation sent by the Queen of Lu was headed by her grandson. His general's uniform made up for his tender years. He seemed well prepared for the age to come. Since Indonesian independence, royal succession has been abolished amongst the nation's myriad kingdoms. So never again will there be another Toraja funeral on such a grand scale. The king's effigy is ready for its journey to the Death Cliffs. The death house of Puang Sanggala is burned to the ground, freeing him to join his ancestors. The dynasty of the Toraja Star Children was ended, with the last king of the tribe making his long journey back to his home in the stars. But was it the end of their contact with another world, I wondered? What was behind these elaborate death rites? And I asked the hereditary high priest, who turned out to be my own age.
The
dead need some help, he said. They're usually reluctant to return to their source. They love this material world and the living, and they cling to them.
Tapi menurut pesanan bahwa memang pada waktu dahulu kala, pada waktu
For our old people, this thing about our ancestors descending from the stars was perfectly natural. It's harder to believe this nowadays. But in those times, perhaps the earth and the sky was still closer together. But you can look at it philosophically too. The reason our coffins and houses are shaped like this is because we slide down into life, stay briefly, and slide on up again out of the material world.
Lawrence and I returned home to Bali to find a crowd gathered in the house of the old artist Gusti Lempad. After 116 years in the material world, he had finally chosen his time to die. Family and friends were tenderly bathing and preparing his body. Like all Balinese, his widow, Gusti Nyang, would never have assigned the task to professional strangers. News of his death had spread fast. It wasn't the fact of his dying that they were all talking about, but the way of it. He had been waiting a long time for the perfect day. The sun was rising at its closest annual point to the great mountain, and it was the ritual day he'd always chosen to complete his major works of art. He gathered his family around, bade them farewell, and simply let go. To us, this conscious death was quite amazing. But our friend Batuan laughed. If you live creatively to 116, he said, you should know how to die. It's not enough just to be clever or just spiritual. You must be complete, as he was. 6 weeks later, Gusti Lempad was cremated. Within hours, his cremation tower and bull, weeks of work by the island's finest artists, would be reduced to ashes, along with his body. It was not a day for mourning, but for celebration. Through the flames, he could break free from the shadow world and pass beyond the screen. Lempad had heard the roar of Krakatoa. He had witnessed its sunsets, far more awesome than those produced by its child, when we visited it 100 years later.
Let us get on with nation building. I think these are good qualities, and we will support that.
Would you contradict me if I tell you that we have got here not by suppressing or pretending that race differences, language differences, culture differences do not exist, but that they can coexist without the majority obliterating or oppressing the minority? That's how it's been done, Mr. Shah.
Yes, agreed.
Not by trying to make my friend Ahmad Mata and Siddiq Sanif Chinese or honorary Chinese, but by my accepting them as fellow Singaporeans with equal rights entitled to equal respect. And when they feel differently and they want to eat separately from me, I respect that. That's how it's been done. Not by pretending it doesn't exist, but by accepting the fact that there are fundamental primeval differences and telling each other we have to live, put up with each other, accommodate, compromise, bargain, compromise again. That's how it's been done. And this is how I put to you, Mr. Chiang, not only your party, but all parties will be forced to go if you have team MPs. You have then to find accommodation, not just with Muhammad Jofri Mahmud, but with what he represents, what he wants, what he aspires for his community. That's the point.
Well, I agree with you, Prime Minister.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, here is a good time for us to see whether race is an important factor or not by looking at some actual situations. Could I ask for Table 2 to be distributed? Table 2 lists out the constituencies which were contested by Malay candidates in general elections from 1955 to 1984. You'll notice that way back in 1948, Encik Sadon bin Haji Juba stood in rural east, a predominantly Malay area. Now we look at the map showing the constituencies for 1955, where the Malay candidates contested. Would you recognize the constituencies contested in 1955 by Malay candidates? Sembawang, Ulu Bedok, Southern Islands. These were the three constituencies won by Malay candidates, and the majority population in these three constituencies were Malays. Changi, fourth constituency contested by a Malay candidate, but he lost. Now we move on to the next map, which showed where Malay candidates stood for election in 1959. UMNO candidates contested in Sembawang, Hamid bin Jumad in Ulu Bedok, and Muhammad Siddiq in Southern Islands. Ulu Bedok, yes, Southern Islands. The areas shaded lightly were the areas also contested by Malay candidates.
May I add that, right, because it's something I know. For the first time in 1959, Mr. Chia, the PAP fielded Malay candidates in or any party fielded Malay candidates in constituencies where Malays are not the majority, and won. On the PAP pulling power to get the Chinese to vote PAP in spite of a Malay candidate. That's the first time it's been done, and only been done by the PAP.
Now, I would move on to the next chart, which shows where Malay candidates contested in 1972. Geylang Serai, Kampong Kembangan in the same general area, Kampong Ubi, Pasir Panjang, which now includes the former Southern Islands. Now we move on to the next map. We jump to 1984. You are familiar with the situation in 84, Mr. Chan. Can you tell us where the Malay candidates contested, whether they were from the PAP or from PKMS or from Workers' Party?
I didn't make a study of it. Look at table.
Well, then look at the table 2. Brickworks, Eunos, Geylang Serai, Kampong Kembangan, Kampong Ubi, Kolam Air, Pasir Panjang, Siglap, Tanah Merah, Bowen, and Tampines. May I ask Mr. Cham or Mr. Ling, what is your interpretation of the various maps which we have been looking at?
On surface, it would appear that with the resettlement and the drop in the Malay population, it would appear that the Malay candidates stand lesser chance in the non-Malay constituencies. It would appear on the face of it that, that because of resettlement, the one-time Malay majority has now become a Malay minority.
Quite right.
It has more or less diminished their chances of success at these constituencies.
Right. So how did they set out to maximize their chances of success? Where did they stand? Geylang Serai, Kampung Kembangan, Kampung Ubi.
No, as I said, I believe this problem can be overcome if you can find a good candidate.
We are trying to go by the evidence shown, because they have stated very clearly that there's no evidence of race playing a part in politics. I'm trying to prove to you that race is a primeval force. You may disagree on the percentage of weightage before the voter decides on the candidate. But from the choice of the candidates themselves, doesn't it tell us something? That racial composition of a constituency plays a part in where the candidates want to stand.
Yes. I think there's no denial in this respect.
Does Mr. Chiam agree with Mr. Ling? Do you agree with Mr. Ling?
Yes. Race
Thank you.
Is a factor to be considered in elections. Yes.
In the afternoon, the discussions continued on voters exercising their preferences for a candidate of their own race.
Mr. Prime Minister, we agree, Mr. Chairman, that we do have this problem, but are we taking the right solutions? This is what we are trying to say.
Have you a better solution? You know that there is a problem. Tell us what your solution is.
Possibly, the ruling party should get the prerogative. If you feel a Malay candidate in certain constituencies, you must make it a rule or an unwritten rule that the opposition must also feel the minority candidate. So the ruling party has got...
Thank you. Thank you.
So the ruling party has got the prerogative. Whoever forms the government, he should have the say where I want to field the Malay candidate.
I understand you now. Therefore, if we field the Malay in Kampung Kembangan, only Malays can contest in Kampung Kembangan.
Not necessarily only Kampung Kembangan.
Just by way of example.
Yes.
Right. Now, we may be able to get your party to agree, but we may not be able to get the SUF to agree, or the Workers' Party. Therefore, we'll have to pass that into the law. Right? That would be very undemocratic, would it?
I think it is better.
That you allow the PAP to decide which constituencies it will field Malays, and only Malays. Now, let's assume we pass that into law. Right? We reserve 9 seats where we have Malays, only Malays. Where we have Malay MPs, only Malays can stand. I am telling you, as Secretary General of the PAP, who has fielded candidates for all seats in 7 general elections since 1959. 59, 84, 7 general elections, and I had to decide where to put Malays. The first breakthrough came in 59, where we won several seats with substantial Malay minorities. And depending on the pull of the PAP, got Chinese votes to support them, and we won. Now, by the 1970s, when the riots, by the late 70s, 1976, when the communal riots were fading in the memory and the younger generation grew up, I had 3 feedbacks. PAP branch secretary, community center management committee, citizens consultative committee. There are 3 different feedbacks. I arranged it. 1 is my party, 2 the government. 1 through the PA, People's Association, another through PMO, consultative committees. They asked me, please next time, give us a Chinese candidate. This chap can't get on with our Chinese grassroots. So, several of them, including Sharai Tadun, I had to move them at the next elections. sometimes after moving them within 1 year of the new constituency, having a new MP, I get the same request, please next time, can we have a Chinese candidate, because this is very difficult. Several such MPs who could not establish rapport empathy had to be dropped. There was nothing wrong with Sharai Tadin. As an MP, as a man, except that he could not bridge this cultural, linguistic, ethnic gap. Now, if we designate Chai Chi, Malays only, the Chinese voters and the Indian voters, who are now the majority, will revolt. Therefore, my scheme, twin them with the next constituency, so that the Chinese voter, if he finds no empathy with the Malay MP, will look for the Chinese MP.
So can I say something?
No, but that is, I'm telling you the genesis, the reasons why your scheme, I've thought of it. Just say, in this area, only Malays, in this area, only Indians. There will be a revolt from the non-minority voters.
So I disagree, sir. Because...
what is your experience?
No,
how many elections have you contested?
1 elections.
Oh. I have contested...
I know, sir. I know,
Mr. participated in 9 general elections, contested in 8. If I include the Malaysian Federation, my party contested in 1 general election there too.
So what we need to do maybe was to give a person like Shari Tadin a lot of Chinese assistance.
I did. I provided him with full backup staff.
And now with comprehensive education in English, I think this problem will solve itself. Because people will be English educated now, they can understand, communicate each other as we go along. And I think they should be able to communicate in English with each other. And if a parent cannot speak English, cannot communicate with the MP, he will have children who
We have been communicating with each other in English, and I still don't understand you. I don't understand how 18% object, and therefore an elected government cannot do it. So each time we're going to do something, we've got to say, look, how many percent is it?
I'm not saying that you cannot do it. You can do it, but it is wiser not to do it. I'm not saying that you cannot do it. You're an elected government, 18% disagree, you can do it. But it is wiser not to do it.
For anybody, any Singaporean, to stand up and say that to a